Hello film fans and welcome to this episode of the Sherlockian. Now, recently I've had some renewed interest in my SAS Rogue Heroes review, and I think it's probably to do with the fact that quite recently, I think on the 19th of April, there was a release by the series creator Stephen Knight when he talked about that there's been a new series 2 commissioned. It's probably going to take place in kind of early 2024 at the latest. Well, that's when it will be released. So I thought it might be fun while we're waiting for that to obviously be filmed and then released. I think it could be quite good fun to have a look at the original series, not series 1, which obviously I've already reviewed, but the documentary series SAS Rogue Warriors, which was presented by the author and journalist Ben Macintyre, and actually was based on his book, which obviously inspired the drama series. Now, I have to admit, this is one of my favourite documentaries. I'm only going to be looking at the first 2 episodes. There's 3 in total, so as not to spoil season 2 of the show, which obviously takes place over that period. But the first 2 episodes are a really good contrast with the drama series. Now, there are a lot of similarities between the two. Obviously, they show a lot of the same people. The difference is in the documentary, they have access to the SAS archives, which I think is the big major selling point of Ben Macintyre's book and the documentary. He actually shows the actual interviews that the SAS themselves conducted with these men in, I think, the 1970s, and it's absolutely fascinating to see the real men involved in those particular events and their first-person accounts, and obviously just what they looked like. It's quite fun to sort of see as well how they'd aged. So you see obviously pictures of them as young men in the documentary, but you also see them talking, as older gentlemen. The thing that really didn't surprise me, but I really appreciated, was how well dressed they all were. They'd obviously all got dressed up for this interview. They'd obviously, were really eager to take part in them. And it's also quite fun to see characters from the show in real life. So you think, oh yeah, that's Gentleman Jim, and oh yeah, that's Mike Sadler. And to see them in real life is actually quite fascinating. Yeah, particularly Reg Seekins, I really enjoyed, because he's far less working class, at least in the way he talks, in the documentary series. In the drama series, they really play up to these kind of, his working class origins in the East End, and he certainly was a very tough bloke in real life. But he actually talks in a slightly more refined manner in real life, which actually makes him all the more intimidating. He speaks with a very kind of even tone, and which I really enjoyed. And he'll be talking about like really serious things happening. It's always quite spine chilling, and just how relaxed he was, talking about it. I think the big major thing that the documentary kind of shows about the drama series, which I actually found quite fascinating to revisit. And I think it might actually. I had a few comments on my review saying people that didn't enjoy the show, they sort of thought, they said they thought it was good drama, that they thought it was bad history. And obviously, no drama series can really entirely sort of capture real life historical events, because you've got to try and condense them all down. And I think on the whole, the show did quite a good job. But the thing that you might enjoy, if you didn't enjoy the show too much, is the fact that the documentary kind of picks up on, I think it's a kind of more balanced view of the SAS. That's not to say that the drama series is unbalanced, but I really enjoyed the fact that one, Beck and McIntyre kind of looks at the failures of the SAS. So, for example, the attack on Benghazi, which I think is mentioned, it might even be kind of sort of amalgamated with another raid in the drama series, but in real life was a total failure. A quarter of their men were killed. Apparently the Axis knew they were coming. Gentleman Jim was actually captured, and he talks in quite a lot of depth about how it happened. And also, the other thing, there was the most spine-chilling account, is Reg Seekins talks about how basically he had to abandon all the wounded when they were retreating, or withdrawing anyway. And obviously that's not shown in the show, but apparently he talks about how hard it was. But he had to tell them basically that they were kind of expendable. He had all these fit and able men, and they were ready to fight again. So they were going to be withdrawn, and he was just going to have to leave the wounded there. and apparently none of them survived, which it must have been a really hard thing to do. And he does seem slightly emotional as he talks about it. It's quite a gripping kind of an account. But obviously that's not shown in the drama series at all, presumably because it might, well, partly I think because of just time constraints, but also I think they might have thought it made the SAS look a bit bad. It certainly, the entire account doesn't put David Stirling in the best of lights. He clearly knew it was apparently like a bad idea. It didn't play up to the SAS strengths of kind of hit and run raids, and also he knew that the Axis knew they were coming. He asked for basically permission to withdraw and didn't get it, so kind of carried on. And obviously, in some ways, of course, he didn't have a choice. But I kind of wonder about the planning of the raid. They didn't really seem to change their strategy after they knew that they were they were expected. They just seemed to think they could drive into Benghazi and then kind of drive out again. It just seemed a bit like flawed. So that's one thing that kind of differs between the two of them. The other thing that I particularly I kind of wish they had put in the drama series, even though I know why they didn't, because it would have kind of perhaps ruined the flow of the action sequence. But there's this brilliant bit where Johnny Evans, I think his name is, one of the younger members of the SAS, is talking about their raid on the airfield, which is shown in great detail in the drama series when they drive through the middle of it, and you get that as amazing shots of them. They're just letting rip with the Browning automatic machine guns, and all those planes are blowing up everywhere, and it's absolutely amazing. But my favourite bit of their account of the event, which isn't shown in the drama series, is apparently David Stirling was in kind of the lead jeep in the middle of the convoy, and Johnny Evans talks about how the fact that suddenly the jeep just stopped, and David Stirling apparently said in a very posh British, officery kind of way, he said, "Oh, why won't it go?" And Reg Seekins, who was in the back, apparently leaned forward and said, "Well, don't get out and check, sir, but I think you'll find we haven't got an engine." And apparently they'd been hit, and almost the entire front of the jeep, they were all fine, but the front half of the jeep had just been obliterated, and so they had to get out and leg it to some of the other jeeps and jump in. And it would have been quite nice, I think, kind of culmination to that sequence. Rather than the bit when they kind of drive back and see all the people they've killed, which I kind of understand, and because they obviously didn't want to make them look too kind of ruthless, for want of a better word, or inhuman. But I think that would actually have suited the tone of that scene better. I mean, because the SAS were ruthless and they did kill lots of people. And yeah, it was war, and also they were also being shot at as well, which is something you don't really get at in the drama series. I mean, the airfield was heavily defended. That's why they drove in all guns blazing and didn't try and sneak in and just blow the planes up on the ground. But yeah, I think that would have been an interesting twist on an action sequence to kind of end it in that kind of humorous way. But yes, just in general, the documentary is absolutely brilliant, and it has some just has some really good, it kind of a mixture. It also, the thing I like about it as well as a historian is it gives you a very good overview of David Stirling as a person. Obviously, the drama series 1 ends with Stirling being captured, so I don't know whether we'll see him again in the second series. But one thing I kind of found interesting about the drama is that it kind of paints Stirling as a little, not incompetent, that would be wrong of me, because he's not portrayed as incompetent, but he is portrayed as kind of a dreamer, and as almost a little bit inexperienced. He has a real rivalry with Paddy Mayne, which I don't think he had in real life. I think he was one of the few people that was actually able to control Paddy Mayne, according to the accounts of the men that served with them. And yeah, the thing I really noticed on this viewing of this documentary is that, according to them, Stirling clearly he was a dreamer, and he did make mistakes, like the attack on Benghazi, or when he tried to drive to meet the Americans, and clearly had a bit of an arrogant streak in him. But he was also incredibly charismatic, and yeah, you get the sense that the men under him would have followed him to the end of the earth. In fact, they wanted to rescue him, but when he got captured, which in itself was shows their kind of loyalty to him. And yeah, you don't, and clearly he was charismatic and very capable. I don't get the sense that somebody like Reg Seekins would have followed a man who was just a dreamer, an imaginative strategist, but was actually a bit incompetent actually at the sort of the day-to-day operations. I get the sense that that though he was clearly very, very capable, he even if he did, make mistakes and was obviously flawed like everybody was, and still is. So yeah, I think that would have perhaps have made his character a little bit more interesting in the drama series, and would have made it more fun to play, apart from anything else. But yeah, overall, this documentary is brilliant, and I would totally recommend it. It's such a wonderful, and the other thing that's so wonderful about their kind of their accounts is just how modest they all are about everything. They'll talk about some, absolutely, horrendous occurrence or heroic moment, and they'll just talk about it like it's an everyday kind of thing. It's quite inspiring, really. And it shows them as real people, not these kind of, savage, cutthroat, ruthless men, who ran around blowing things up and cutting throats. I will say this for the drama series. I think they did a really good job of actually giving them more individual characters. The characters you see on the screen in the documentary really tie up nicely with the people, or the way the characters are portrayed in the drama. Albeit perhaps the drama characters are a little bit tweaked, maybe kind of they exaggerate certain features, but it doesn't feel kind of either an insult to the particular individuals, nor is it obviously supposed to be. It feels like a lovely kind of homage to them. And the one thing I always found incredible about the drama SAS Rogue Heroes is they have so many different characters, and yet you can recognize them all in combat, and you actually feel something if one of them gets killed or injured or gets captured. That's the most impressive thing about it. The one thing I would say is that, yeah, they actually could have actually added some even more, brilliant sequences in. There's some bits in I sort of, when I was watching the documentary, I sort of thought, I wonder why they didn't include that in the drama series, because that would have been brilliant. Like for instance, when Sterling gets captured, the only reason in the drama series, the reason Mike Sadler and Johnny Evans aren't captured is because um, they're out scouting, and so they're away from the main group when the Germans arrive. But in real life, they were actually with them, and they were asleep when the Germans turned up, and they just legged it. And they happened to leg it in the opposite direction to Sterling and the rest of the men. And they said they only escaped because a flock of goats happened just to flock around them when they were hiding behind this rock, and the German paratroopers who were looking for them just walked past. And you sort of thought, I wonder why they didn't include that, because that would have been really intense and exciting. Apparently, Johnny Evans said they got to the point they were actually trying to work out the German word for surrender. So that would have been brilliant. Yeah, I've no idea why they didn't include it. Maybe they didn't think it was heroic enough. But I'm just kind of surprised. You know, as they made such a fuss about how historically accurate everything was in the drama series, in the publicity, and they talked about the fact that that they really did steal the piano and made a big thing out of it. I'm surprised they didn't also make even more attention to detail with kind of amazing, like exciting stuff like that. I don't know. Maybe it was just they ran out of time, or they couldn't find enough goats, maybe. But yeah, overall, in terms of which one I prefer, it's really difficult. I like the drama series. I think it's really good, but I think I prefer the documentary a little bit more. I mean, it depends kind of what mood I'm in, but the documentary is so wonderful because it's one of the few historical documentaries when you can actually almost you almost feel like the people involved are telling their own story, and that Ben Macintyre is just kind of curating the evidence around it. It must be one of the most involved first person kind of oral history narratives that I think I've ever seen in a documentary. They got so many people in talking about it, and they aren't just observers of historical occurrence. They actually were involved in it, and they are being asked specific questions about that event. It really feels quite kind of a very kind of community focused, kind of personal documentary. You feel like you're seeing something actually quite special, which you don't get with a lot of historical documentaries. It's not the kind of impersonal kind of narrative of a historian analysing the events. It's actually more of a kind of people telling their own story in this very personal kind of way, which is just brilliant. It's really awesome. Um, so yeah, I really love this documentary. I totally recommend it. I think it's actually on Apple TV, if I remember rightly. So it's well worth checking out. That was my review of SAS Rogue Warriors. I will probably have a look at the last episode in this documentary series in the run-up to SAS Rogue Heroes Season 2, just as, kind of a discussion of the kind of things they might be including in it, because that'd be really cool. But anyway, Thank you very much for watching. If you've got any more examples of either historical documentaries or historical drama series you'd like me to review, pop them in the comments below and let me have your thoughts either on the documentary or on the drama series and stuff you think they could have maybe included or maybe shouldn't have included, or yeah, just different things they could have done better or they did really well. Anyway, thanks very much for watching and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.